Welcome to the Gin&Tonic show on a new time and date slot. It's Friday, 8 p.m. This is a test that we are doing. It's Rob here from Speaker's Corner, hosting today the Gin&Tonic show, as I say, on a different day. It's Friday, 8 p.m. So we're going to see how many people we get onto the show today, both as viewers as well as people joining the show. So welcome to the show. We'll just wait a short while to see if we get people joining the show. I'm also going to share the Hangout itself. So let me go and actually share the Hangout on the viewing side as well, so people can see if we can do that. We'll pop that in over here. What's this saying here? Remove any web addresses. We actually want to. Hey, Cal, are you able to join? I just want to see. It's not allowing me to paste the. It's not really helping me. It's not allowing me to paste the link in here for some reason. Message not sent. Why is that the case? Let me just refresh. I see why. Let me just try something else here. Let's try this. There we go. Hopefully you can join there now. I've sent you the link. I was logged in with the wrong login, so hopefully you can hop on now.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hi.
Abu, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. I don't see your logo coming up on the Hangout.
This is. I'm using another.
Well, you're on
maybe
anyway. I can hear
maybe
you.
I am.
Normally, you'd have an image
Maybe
on the
I'm
bottom.
logged in as the Gin&Tonic show. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe we both are, and so which is good because if one of us drops, then the other one can take over. I'm going to put the link into the video as well. So let me just bring up the videos here as well. So
okay. Anyway,
how are you? You well?
No. But I think we are both showing up as the Gin&Tonic show. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yes, Friday. So there we have somebody in the chat saying Friday. Yes, we're trying out Harim. We're trying out a Friday at 8 p.m. to see if we get more people. So I'm posting the link here. Let me do that again because that didn't seem to show very well. I'm pasting the link here for this particular video into the main chat so that people can see which video that we are talking about. So it's hopefully that comes up there. Just open that up and make sure. So this is the original video that we will talk about. I've pasted it into the main chat there so that people can see the original. We won't necessarily go through that entire video from start to finish. I don't know. Abu, did you get a chance to have a look at that at all?
No, I'm sorry. I have a chance.
Okay.
But you know what? One thing we can do before, because maybe not all people have joined. Maybe you can tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, could do.
Because I don't think maybe not all people know who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Rob. I go down to Speaker's Corner on a reasonably regular basis, so I'm a non-believer. I class myself as an atheist. I guess one would say an agnostic atheist or a weak atheist, which essentially means that I don't say for certain there are no gods. I say there's no good reason or evidence to believe in a God, but I don't rule them out entirely. So from a belief point of view, my default belief is non-belief. From a knowledge point of view, I'm not entirely certain that there is no God. So there is that difference, which I often see people get confused between knowledge and belief. And so I go down to, originally I started going down to find out what people believe and why do they believe it. And well, I still do that for a great deal of the time. I have a fair understanding as to what people believe and why they believe it. And I'm always interested in different people sharing their sort of viewpoints. But obviously there's been, me having done this now for sort of 8 or 9 months, there's some reasonably regular things that come up that people say that I'm kind of used to now. So I'm sort of reasonably well aware. And I was prior to that anyway. I was very interested in sort of religion and why people believe it. And so I did a lot of research on YouTube, etc. And, you know, it's a huge field, so many different topics. And so I'm more familiar with the main arguments, whereas you may be more familiar with specific verses in the Quran. I'm only familiar with that when I interact with somebody and they quote a verse, then I'll go look it up, see what it's got to say, etc. But I'm still reading through the Quran. It's a tough read for me. It's not in chronological order, so that makes it challenging. Most books, there's a start, middle, and end, and this is kind of all over the show. And so I have bought a book from a guy called Bill Warner, who has actually rewritten it, for want of a better word, putting it in chronological order and telling the story of Muhammad as he went. So that's kind of very useful for me as a non-believer to
Interesting.
have an idea.
Where did you find that book? How old is that?
His name is Bill Warner. He was originally a physicist, and over the last 10 or more years, he's been studying with a very scientific view Islam. He calls it political Islam because he differentiates between the religious view, which is just sort of some of the tenets of praying to the God, and then the other majority part of Islam, for want of a better word, which is the political side. And so he's written a number of books, but as I say, one of them that's particularly interesting to me is putting the Quran in chronological order, which must have taken a hell of a lot of time to work out which verses come where, because they kind of all over the show. And then also weave in, as I say, Muhammad's story. So he was here, he was doing this, and then the verses will come up. So that sort of gives you the verses. So he'll give the verse number, so it might be Surah 10 verse 5 will come up at a certain point. So he does quote the original verses from the Quran, but he also drops the multiple. So apparently Moses is repeated like 39 times, so he only puts it in once so that you hear about it in the time frame of Muhammad's life. So that's sort of quite interesting for me.
That sounds really interesting. Physicist.
And so,
where...
yeah, Bill Warner, so Bill, and then Warner. He's got a YouTube channel. I think it's called Political Islam, if I'm not mistaken. So it's worth looking up. And again, some people are really, disliked by, Muslims, and he's less disliked because he focuses on the text itself. And so, he's got his view that it's particularly dangerous, etc. But he focuses very much on the text. So, in the great scheme of things, compared to say Ayaan Hirsi Ali or other people that some people think are quite extreme, he gets far less death threats. So I suppose in some sense that's a good thing, and also shows that he's just focusing on what it's being said.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Tom Holland received some. I think it's some death threats, but
yes, for his documentary, isn't it? In the Shadow of the Sword, and he wrote that book that apparently Jay Smith takes some credit for, suggesting that Tom Holland write this book. I don't know whether that's true or not. And apparently it took Tom Holland 5 years to write the book, and then of course he did that documentary which aired on BBC.
Jay Smith.
Yeah, the Christian preacher. He, in one of the videos, he talks about how he told Tom Holland to write, this book, which Holland did.
Yeah, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is true, but
so and I go down now and I video them, because in the beginning when I went down to Speaker's Corner, I was just having a conversation. I saw these guys videoing, and I thought, well, let me video it, because I'd love if every single one of my conversations was video, but that's not the case necessarily. Obviously, I'm a little bit more known now because I go regularly, but I take a camera down myself, and whenever I got the chance, I'll video, some of the conversations. And the one that we'll talk about tonight is, I've spoken to Shabir Yusuf. That's the Muslim gentleman that we'll be talking about. I've spoken to him about 5 or 6 times, and I think most of them are recorded, if not by myself, then on his channel, which is the All Truth Revealed channel. So if you want to see a lot of Shabir talking and a lot of his conversations, go to All Truth Revealed, and that will be basically his channel or his group of guys that come down. I think it's from Blackburn or wherever they drive down once a month or once every couple of months. And so one of the videos that we'll comment on today is one of those where he had a conversation with another gentleman, because I did a voiceover, a review of one of the videos that I did with him, one of the conversations I had with him, and that was received rather badly on my channel. Most of my subscribers are Muslims, and of course the main critique against me doing this was that he wasn't there to answer my critique, and I pointed out that wasn't the point of it. It wasn't there to make fun of him or to say things behind his back, but really to point out mistakes I made, mistakes that I thought he made, and I thought it would be instructive from that point of view. But of course, some Muslims have got a very different view on things, so they don't see it as educational, instructive. They see it as me doing something behind his back. And so subsequently, I've spoken to him, which again is on my channel, about what I think is the way that he comes across. So he can say whatever he wants to say. What I'm going to point out is that I think some of the methodology, some of the tactics he uses when having a conversation isn't useful if we want to have clarity, if we want to understand each other, and we want to move towards truth. And I think what I did with this particular video that we'll do today is I found one where it wasn't me. So I'm not involved, so people can't point out and go, oh, Rob, you're just trying to, say things to make yourself look good or make him look bad. That's not the point. I wanted to point out some of the things that I noticed going on so that, hopefully it's educational for people, and hopefully you can chime in as well and give me your thoughts. So I think Abu's muted himself for a short while there. Yeah, Jay Smith, the guy with the glasses, grey hair. That's right, Harim. Yes, he's the Christian preacher who stands up on the thing there and sort of, you can hear him shouting whenever he's there. You can hear him over the voice sometimes of anybody else.
Haram Sheikh, have you joined the show?
No, I think he's just a viewer at the moment. I don't know.
Come on the show, Haram Sheikh. I want to see if it works. If I was fiddling with
So anybody who wants to join the show, I'll put the link in again. This is the link. If you click on that link, you can join the show. You're more than welcome to come in and share your views. Particularly if you're Muslim, we obviously like to have some Muslim views, hear what people have got to say, etc. And what we will do is go through this video, which I've got on my second monitor here. Hopefully I've turned the volume up. I will say with this video that it's sometimes hard to hear, but what I have done for the most part is I'll stop the video after a certain amount of time, and then I'll repeat what they're saying at certain points, because it is quite difficult. So when I was doing this, I sort of had to play it back a few times because the sound isn't good. Again, I've given you the main link for the original video so you can go watch it. What I was more particularly interested in was Shabir having a conversation with this guy called Philip, because the video starts off with another fellow there called Isaac, who's he's more rhetorical, so he's more like kind of goes there to make fun and just have arguments. He's not really there to have a serious debate. I mean, he gives Muslims a hard time, for want of a better word, but he's not an intellectual guy where you can kind of learn a lot. So he goes with sort of very basic things, which is fine, but that's not it's entertaining to some degree, but it's not educational really. Whereas I think with Philip, there were a couple of things that I thought, okay, this guy, again, when you start to learn things, you can kind of recognize people that have got, some level of thinking and intellect. And I thought Philip did. You'll see he's quite quiet though. And so he does get sort of a little bit overawed by Shabir in a sense. And so Shabir is able to assert himself a little bit more than perhaps he would in a more quiet conversation, quiet setting. So nice. With that said, if we are ready, let me share my screen here, and hopefully I can. There we go. Let me see if I can share that. Is that coming up there on the screen? Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant.
The weird thing is that I can't see it in the live.
No, but that's behind. So that it'll come up where we're
now I see it. Okay,
10 seconds or more behind. So the people that are watching live will be behind us by sort of 10 or 15 seconds.
I see.
Okay. Right, so I'm going to play this, and as I say, I'll stop it every so often. I'm going to stop it quite soon, so I'm not going to let it run for very long because there's a lot that's being said. Some of it, as I say, that you're not able to hear it that well, but I'll repeat it because I've gone through and I've literally wrote it out word for word at certain points, and then we'll have some comments over. If I go for a little bit too long, then feel free, Abu, to just say, hey, Rob, stop, and I can stop the video and you can say something.
Yeah, or maybe it's something interesting we can just...
yes, but I will stop it a lot and then give your thoughts as well. So whenever I'm finished, then give me your thoughts as well. Right, so without further ado, let's get started. So the video, as I say, starts now with Shabir moving away from having spoken to Isaac, and he's going to move over now and start speaking to Philip. Okay, so basically Shabir asked this other fella for evidence. That's Shabir's main sort of way of doing things. Whenever somebody says anything, he'll ask for evidence, which is absolutely fine. It just doesn't seem to work the other way around. When he says something, he doesn't always provide the evidence. But basically he said here to Philip, he said, Allah was imagined in the 7th century. And so I asked him, i.e. the other guy, Isaac, what the evidence was. And Philip says here, Occam's razor or parsimony. And for those that don't know, and I had to look this up some time back, it's the principle in philosophy and science that assumptions introduced to explain a thing must not be multiplied beyond necessity. Hence, the simplest of several hypotheses is always the best in accounting for unexplained facts. So in other words, the simplest explanation, essentially, without adding extra bits, is normally the best. And so that's Philip's point here, is that we can deal with many of these claims using Occam's razor, or otherwise called the law of parsimony. So let's continue from here. Okay, so Shabir is asking for evidence of an observed phenomenon because he doesn't understand at this moment in time. He didn't give Philip enough time to explain clearly what Occam's razor is. So what he says here is it needs to be applied in the 7th century. And Philip is attempting to say to him, no, it's got nothing to do with the 7th century. I want to explain to you what the principle is. And so Shabir is pressing him to try and give evidence because he doesn't understand at this moment in time what Occam's razor is. So
hold on a minute. Maybe we should explain what, maybe not all viewers know what. I read from Wikipedia what they say about Occam's razor.
Go ahead,
Occam's razor, also written Occam's razor, and lex parsimoniae, Latin for law of parsimony, is a problem-solving principle attributed to William of Occam, who was an English Franciscan friar, scholastic philosopher and theologian. The principle can be interpreted as stating among competing hypotheses the one with the fewest assumptions should be selected. I mean, like this Occam's razor, it's a nice idea, but I don't know if that is really part of kind of modern philosophy of science in that way. I mean, there are many theories that have turned out to be true that like needs more than one assumption.
Yes.
So it's not really this Occam's razor. I don't know really.
Well, it's not an ultimate thing, but what it is a useful tool, and it's a useful tool particularly when you've got two competing hypotheses. So two things that are trying to explain the same thing. Generally speaking, we would invoke Occam's razor on the one that gives us the more simplistic explanation. So all things being equal, if there's two hypotheses and they both are sound and valid, then the one with the least amount of assumptions or additional hypotheses built in is the ones we tend to go with. And so this is kind of the entire point here.
I would say that doesn't mean that the hypothesis is true.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely right. It's not a guarantee, but it is a tool to help us. So if we got to, and as I say, everything else being equal, then we would tend to go with that because it's a tool that can help us. But you're right, it's not something that's guaranteed to.
Can I just give an example from physics that makes it like, and you can use it in both ways. So you can take, for example, what interpretation of quantum mechanics is correct. So the guys that like for the Copenhagen interpretation, they would say that, oh, the Copenhagen interpretation, it's Occam's razor. You don't need anything more than the equations. It's just shut up and calculate. And the many worlders, or the Hugh Everett guys, they will say, no, actually, just trust the equations. Occam's razor says that the many world interpretation should be correct because you don't need anything more. You just say, here's the equations, and yes. So they are both using Occam's razor as an argument, but both of them can't be true. Maybe neither of them are true, but this is like how Occam's razor can be misused in many ways, and it's not really an evidence in itself.
Yes, so we'd have to look at those more closely and see which one has got the least amount of assumptions built in your particular example. But you're right, it's not a perfect thing, but you're right. And so what if Shabir had given Philip enough time here to understand what law of parsimony or Occam's razor is, which he didn't do, and so you'll see as we go through the video, he still hasn't got an understanding, because he'll say certain things that immediately tell you he doesn't understand what Occam's razor is. Had he have given him more time, he could have then pressed him and gone, hang on a moment, Philip, Occam's razor doesn't necessarily mean, yes, it might help, but it's not guaranteed. So he could use exactly the argument you brought up, which is a good one, but as you'll see, he doesn't do that. So let's listen in here now as Philip tries to explain what Occam's razor is. Okay, so I don't know if you heard all of that. There was, Isaac is shouting in the background. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? So what Philip did is he said, let me explain to you Occam's razor. And so Shabir said, okay, give me an example. And so what he basically did is he talks about an example. You may have heard of it. It's quite famous. He talks about the guy that claimed that he could turn pages with his mind. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but he was an American guy, looked a bit like a Tony Robbins. And what he would do is sit by a book, and the pages would start to turn. And what they found out, though, because everybody went, okay, this is quite amazing. But what they found out when they investigated this, that he was blowing breath through his mouth. And so, in fact, there was an explanation as to why he was turning the pages. So this was Philip's example of Occam's razor dealing with this, which I'm not sure is a good example of Occam's razor dealing with this. It's just basically the guy claimed that he could turn pages. They actually found out that he was blowing breath very quietly and very specifically through his mouth, that he was able to turn these pages. And somebody else actually learned how to do it and showed him how to do it. And if you go onto YouTube, you'll find it. It's quite famous now, where this guy's quite surprised that somebody else can do it. And then, of course, the guy tells the charlatan fella, hey, I'm doing this with my mouth. So that example is what Philip was attempting to talk about here. Let's go about this guy that was turning the pages. But then Shabir, again, misunderstands him, and he says, if he made a mistake, then it can't be an example. So, he completely misunderstands what Philip is saying. Philip is saying, here's an example to talk about Occam's razor, and the guy made a mistake, or he was shown to be incorrect. And Shabir goes, no, that's not an example. But he doesn't understand that Philip is talking about Occam's razor. He's not talking about the guy specifically. And I think that's, again, where the confusion comes in here. So we'll carry on from here now and just hear what Philip has got to say moving forward here after he attempts to talk about this guy with the book. Okay, so Shabir asked for another example. He's not happy with the example. clearly because he doesn't understand Occam's razor and the law of parsimony. So he asked Philip for another example. He doesn't understand the guy with the book. And so Philip talks about L. Ron Hubbard. Hopefully we're all aware L. Ron Hubbard is the creator, inventor of Scientology. And so Philip goes, hey, the reason, another example of the law of parsimony is L. Ron Hubbard. There's no reason to believe any of that's true. And he invokes the law of parsimony to say there's, don't try and complicate things. Again, I'm not sure this is such a great example. If I was Shabir, I would have asked more, how does the law of parsimony suggest that this is a bad, that L. Ron Hubbard is incorrect? How do you use the law of parsimony? But he, again, doesn't understand it. And so Philip tries to explain it and say, hey, it's L. Ron Hubbard. But Shabir says, no, 1 second, respectfully. Establishing whether there is a reason to believe something is not the same as establishing a fact. And so Philip is trying to explain, but Shabir sort of takes over at this point. So he won't allow him to finish explaining. And you'll hear he gets a little bit frustrated now because Shabir is jumping in, not allowing him to actually explain the L. Ron Hubbard example.
Could you turn up the sound a little bit?
Okay, so that's the key point there. You heard it there. He said an explanation can be right or wrong, and Philip says exactly, but you go for the most parsimonious. In other words, you go for the one with the least assumptions. And so he's attempted to explain that, there's no reason to believe in Scientology. People make things up, and what's the best explanation is that they've made things up, not that there is in fact a God that brought people down into volcanoes, etc., etc. If you read the Scientology, it makes all the other religions look somewhat plausible, just to show you how crazy Scientology is. There's Xenu, etc., etc. And so Philip is basically saying, what's the most parsimonious? What's the best explanation? People made it up, and that's his example of the law of parsimony, which is what this entire conversation is around. You want to add anything there, Abu?
No, I'm just thinking. I mean, I as I said, I agree that if you look at the problem, I agree that Occam's razor, or it's a more simpler explanation to say that existence just appears from some kind of natural laws than saying that a God appears and then creates the universe. But that's my opinion. That's the kind of thing that there's a real hardcore scientific philosophy of science dude should be a little bit skeptical, because we humans are so good at fooling ourselves, and therefore I'm a little bit skeptic to this Occam's razor idea.
Right,
yes,
let me give you
okay.
Let me give you an example. We'll just pause the video here for a second. Let me give you the example that I use when I go down to Speaker's Corner. So Muslims claim that God, Allah, created the universe from nothing, and by nothing they mean absolute nothing, and the universe is completely and utterly separate from Allah. It's got nothing to do with Allah. Somehow he created this from something other than himself and from nothing. Now, when I go down to Speaker's Corner, I say, this doesn't make sense. This is incoherent. Let me give you an explanation which is more parsimonious than your explanation. Because remember, we don't know. So
yeah,
what's the best explanation?
This was I agree with. I agree with you. I think a much simpler theory is to believe that the universe appeared because of some kind of underlying natural causes that we
No, I don't even go there. I'm happy to grant that there's some kind of supernatural being. But if we take the supernatural being's qualities and attributes into account, he's eternal, he's infinite, he's all-powerful, which, okay, I don't accept all-powerful. Let's call it
but these kind of attributes, I think, they are less simplistically beautiful than the idea that it just appeared because of some natural laws that we may not understand. I mean, Lawrence Krauss has this book, A Universe from Nothing, but I don't know. Anyway, but what I mean is I'm very suspicious of using Occam's razor because it's so easy to fool yourself. It's the same example as I gave. The Copenhagen interpretation guys will say, no, our interpretation is much more beautiful, and the Hugh Everett will say, our interpretation is more simplistically beautiful, and almost all guys will say the same thing. So there's no way to like.
Okay, but you've brought up an example, and you know, with respect, you haven't given me the full explanation on both of them. So what we need to understand is what are the assumptions being made in both of them. Now we can measure the two of them, because what you've just said is an overall view on those two interpretations. What I'm talking about as an example here is what Muslims say and what I say. So if there is a God, I say if there is an all-powerful God, he created the universe from his own essence, from himself, because there's no other way that he could have created the universe. And from that explanation versus the Muslim explanation, my one is more parsimonious, or it uses Occam's razor. That was really just to give you the example.
Okay.
So if you look at mine and you look at the Muslim explanation for how the universe came into being, if you accept that there is a powerful being out there, then my one is much more parsimonious, and it makes more coherent sense. So it was just an example, again, to explain what Philip is talking about. I don't want us to get too sidetracked, because this whole thing is going around Occam's razor, and that's what Philip's point is. And he's attempted to demonstrate it here. But again, you know, as I say, it doesn't seem to me that Shabir understands, because he didn't give Philip time, what Occam's razor is. And that's why, you know, he's going off on tangents a little bit here.
There are guys saying here that they can't hear the sound properly. I think they mean from the video, because this is the same thing that I get. It's very, very faint, the sound.
Oh, is it? Okay, so I'll give you again. So for the guys in the chat, here is the, whoops, here is the link to the original video. So if you go and watch that, you should see the full video. It started around 4 minutes. So watch it again. I've turned the volume up quite a lot here, so I don't know. I'll turn it up a bit more. It might deafen me here, but we'll give it a go and see if that makes it a bit easier to hear it. But we'll go from here now. We'll listen to a little bit more of this as we go forward here.
There's no reason to believe any of them. Give me one example of Scientology which you think the space lords, you know, visit the Earth. Right, okay. Bring that to the
Okay, so I've written my notes here. Let's take a moment to catch the breath here. The point that Philip is trying to make is that when a claim or assumption is made using Zeno, in this case with the Scientology, he wants to invoke Occam's razor, which says that assumptions introduced to explain a thing must not be multiplied beyond necessity. And hence the simplest of several hypotheses is always the best in accounting for unexplained facts. Now, as you've pointed out, Abu, that may not necessarily be the case, but that's the argument that he's employing here. And in this case, the simplest explanation is that people imagined or made up Scientology from L. Ron Hubbard, who's obviously very famous with this sort of stuff. And the burden of proof is on the one making the positive claim, in other words, the Scientologist in this case. And Philip says we can use Occam's razor to dispense with their claim. In other words, if you don't have evidence and you're making a claim that has multiple assumptions built in and you haven't got evidence, we can dismiss the claim. That is Philip's essential point here. Which we can always question and go, hang on a moment, but that's the point that he's trying to get across here, that if you make a claim, it's almost like what Hitchens said. You know, any claim made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, essentially, which is like what's called Hitchens' razor. I think if you go and look it up now, people have used that. Hitchens' razor is anything asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
I find my more less problematic in a way, but maybe we should not get too sidetracked here.
Okay, let's carry on from there.
Anyway, even if I don't agree with Occam's razor or agree, but even if I don't think it's a real scientific tool in the end, it's interesting to hear how he will react to this.
Yes,
argument.
and I think, as I said multiple times, had Shabir given him enough time and had a better understanding of what Occam's razor is, he probably wouldn't have asked these questions. But he jumped in very quickly. He doesn't have a clear understanding, and so he's asking for what was the sentence he just said here? He said, "Wait. Are we going to apply a reason and not evidence?" And Occam's razor doesn't talk about evidence per se. It's a framework for talking about the best explanation and not multiplying multiple assumptions. So there isn't evidence per se in there, and so that's why I say he's misinterpreted. So let's listen again, because he talks a lot and he interrupts Philip quite a bit here. So Philip doesn't often get a chance to actually explain things as clearly as he might have done.
I know exactly what my question is. Evidence is objective, testable, verifiable, notifiable, scientific method. But now I'm asking, good reasons for it. Absolutely. Good reasons and bad reasons. Then it's only not necessarily. He's leading you down a whirlpool. I know. So if you say it's just reason, that's not the case, because there's input there from years of experience.
Okay, so I want to draw your attention to something here. So obviously Philip talks about the law of parsimony. You hear him talk about it very clearly there. And then Shabir says, there you go again. Forget about the principle for 1 second. Are you going to establish it only using reason? And this is something I've heard Shabir say in the past. So you try and, again, Philip tries to make the point, and Shabir says, forget about this, or put this to one side, or let me not deal with what you've just brought up. Let's talk about what I want to talk about. So he basically just sidesteps what Philip is basically talking about here and wants to go off on his own track, again, because he doesn't understand it. So when Philip brings up the good reasons and bad reasons, then Shabir goes, good reasons and bad reasons. And of course, Isaac jumps in, as you heard there. And Philip says, reason is the process of tracking inferential relationships between objects, right? Shabir says yes. Then Philip says, if you can say if you say it's just reason, that's not the case there, because there's input of years of experience of interacting in the world. So he's basically saying there's a lot of information that we can track, and we can say here's the best explanation essentially, which is a little bit like Occam's razor. And so that's what Philip is getting at here, that we've got a lot of information in the world and we can track it and we can get the best explanation from all the data that's come in over thousands of years.
Fatima said, maybe you should point your mic to the speaker. Do you hear the sound from the video?
Yes, I'm hearing it very loudly in my headphones here. I've turned it up.
Sometimes that works. Maybe it will make.
Let me just see here.
Noises. It might work.
Is there let me just see if there's any way to make it louder here. So I've got both of these. I've got both these on you. You should be able to hear that quite clearly. There's nothing I can do to make it any louder.
No, but like if you point your headset to the
I'm wearing headphones here, and you can hear it through the headphones. I mean, I can.
Yeah.
Can people that are listening? Can you just tell me whether you can hear the audio from the video at all? Is it at all visible, audible to you? Just give them a second.
I think they hear it. Yeah, I think they hear it the way I do. I hear it's a very, very weak sound.
I'm not sure how else I can do this, unfortunately, because I'm looking at the.
You can just put the headphones on the mic.
Yeah, well, the headphones and the mic are all one. So I've got headphones in my ears and the mic I'm talking through. So I'm using like the Apple, so I can hear very clearly in my headphones. I'm not muting myself or anything like that.
But it's weird that I don't hear it as well as you are.
I'm just going to go built in here, built in microphone.
Otherwise, I could do it.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll take it out here. Let me just take out the audio and see if this makes any difference. So what I'm essentially doing now, can you hear me? You're going to come over the speaker as well.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yep.
I hear you.
Okay, so let's try and carry on like this now and see whether this makes a difference. You'll hear yourself probably as well. Okay, so let's try now.
I agree with what you are saying, but again, you are only confirming what I read. Not for reason. One second. Absolutely. Absolutely. What's any science? Look at this. This brother, I did not read the when he was asked what happened at the start, do we know? Can't say no. No, one second. Okay. So now, can we apply the scientific method to that particular file? It depends. No. Yes or no? Well, sometimes we can. No. Right. Yes, we can. Here it is. Yes, we can. Tell me how. Well, through observation. We have 5 senses. You can't observe the beginning of the universe. No. So now let's go back to that. Just tell me, can you observe that? No, we can't. You can't. Can you test it? No, you can't. No. Can you verify it? No, you can't. Sorry. That's different. Wait a minute. When we talk about models being made and predictions being made, put that aside. You've got to make an admission here, which I know you are reluctant to do. That is the blind. You cannot apply the scientific method.
Did you hear that okay?
Much better.
Okay, so essentially what happens there, unfortunately Isaac interrupts there a little bit. He's not really following along, and so he interrupts a little bit there. But basically now Shabir goes to the beginning of the universe, and he goes, can you observe the beginning of the universe? And of course the answer for all of us is no. So he says, can we use a scientific method to test how the universe came about? And Philip says, it depends. If you get a model that makes predictions, and Shabir says, sorry, that's different, referring to the scientific model that makes predictions, and then says, wait a minute, when you talk about models that make predictions, keep that aside. You've got to make the admission here, and I know you're reluctant to, that the beginning of the universe cannot apply the scientific method to it. So Philip has just said, hang on a moment, if you make a scientific prediction, which is like the hypothesis that cosmologists and theoretical physicists make, then you can make a prediction about how the universe got started. And with enough data, we can either falsify it or we can approve it, for want of a better word. So Philip is basically saying, yes, you can. You can use the scientific method or a scientific probabilistic predictional model to test the universe. And Shabir says, no, keep that aside. So in other words, now we won't talk about what you just said. You've just got to agree with what I'm saying, which is we can't use the scientific method. So for me, if I was listening, and of course Philip is a little bit...
Do you think that was like deliberate diss on his part?
Yes, it's like, so if you bring up a fact, it's like you, Abu, saying to me, well, the fact is, Rob, we can do it. And I say, hang on a moment, Abu, let's just put that aside. You've got to agree with me that what I said is true. And you'll be going, what? I just brought up a fact. You can't just dismiss my fact out of hand. You've got to deal with what I said. And of course, Shabir is very good here going, hang on, put that aside. Let's just say what I said. You've got to agree with me. I'm like, what?
But this falsifiability thing, sorry, I was a bit sidetracked. So I didn't really hear. What was his exact argument that you can't apply?
Shabir's argument is that you can't apply the scientific method to things that we haven't seen. In other words, the beginning of the universe. And Philip says, hang on a moment. No, we can if we use predictive models. So if we've got predictions, then we can make predictions that can talk about how the universe got started. And Shabir goes, no, put that aside. You've got to agree with me. What did you say? You've got to make the admission here, which you're reluctant to do, that the beginning of the universe, you cannot apply the scientific method to it. So
the thing is, though, most of these people, they have absolutely no idea what the scientific method is. They think they do.
Yes, exactly. And
okay, like if I go back to my village and I see that they're brown like me, and I make a prediction, the next 2 people I see will be brown, the next 5 people I see will be brown. Okay, I'm going to make another prediction. The next 100 people I see will be brown. Conclusion, all humans are my ethnicity. That is how the scientific method works. But that's what they think.
Yes, and of course that can be falsifiable. That can be falsified, can't it? And that's exactly what we're doing with the beginning of the universe. So they use the inflationary model. I've been watching Alan Guth, who is the father of cosmology. Brilliant series if you want to watch it online. It's in one of the universities. They offer it for free. And so there's different models that predict how the universe got started. And with enough evidence, you can falsify or you can clarify one of those models. And that's the predictive model that Philip is attempting to talk about. But Shabir just sidesteps it, just swipes it aside and says, hang on a moment, put that aside. You've got to make the admission that you can't apply the scientific method. And Philip is basically trying to say that, hey, scientific predictions are part of the scientific method, but Shabir is having none of this.
But look, this thing that falsifiability, that you can apply the scientific method to the beginning of the universe. I mean, that depends on, that totally depends on this can be you have to make a difference between apples and oranges here, because even like
do you think that scientific prediction, that predictive models are part of the scientific method?
The thing is, though, you'd have to explain to them what that is. You have to explain to them what a model is, like what a working model is. You have to explain to them the difference between hypothesis and theory. You have to explain all of this. You have to walk them through it step by step. When you talk about a scientific model, you have to say, okay, imagine a jigsaw, right? And it doesn't fit, so you have to find a piece that fits, and you bring it all together and you find these little bits that fit, and eventually you get like a complete picture. And even that could be wrong, but I mean, you literally have to take those baby steps with them because they do not understand it.
Yes, Philip could definitely have explained it better, but again, as you notice in the video, he doesn't really get a chance. Shabir keeps cutting him off and trying to get him to, just sidestepping his points and trying to get him to agree. This is not really a debate, in my opinion. I've watched this multiple times. It is Shabir trying to assert himself because Philip is a lot quieter. He's quite a smart guy from what I can see here. But Shabir is very assertive, and so he's just sidestepping and avoiding what Philip is saying. He could have, as Abu has pointed out, said, hang on a moment, but the scientific prediction models, let's discuss that, because I don't think that can, that can't predict the beginning of the universe. And here's my reasons why. And I could have had that discussion, as you said, about the scientific prediction model, but he just sideswipes it entirely and goes, hey, just forget about that. Let's put that aside, and you've got to agree with me. And that's, nobody does that in normal debates. That's
like he is using it as almost like a magician that distract you to not look at like how the trick is done. But what I want to say is that so no one is confused. Like, for example, Alan Guth's inflation theory, I would say is testable, and some people like oh, we don't have to go into that, but the thing is, it depends on how far back you go. Can you say that, for example, Lawrence Krauss extreme, like a universe from nothing, is that testable in the same way? I mean, you can have a longer discussion, but yes.
Yeah, well, yes, you can. I've read Lawrence's book about 5 times because it's a lovely book, but there's certain nuances in there, and even I don't have like 100% understanding. I've got sort of 90%. I've read, as I say, read it multiple times. But Krauss obviously goes, just in Krauss's thing, if we sidestep for a minute, he's not talking about the nothing that religious people talk about. So his version of nothing is just the absence of space and time. Whereas religious...
Well, that's something that, again, religious people seem to have a hard time grasping. So you have to say, like, there can be different types of nothing. And it does take patience to walk them through it. You have to say to them, like, okay, what you're talking about is actually got a term. It's called empty setness, which is a nothingness defined as the absence of anything. And that's not even something that physicists care about. It's not even a scientific type of nothing.
Yeah.
Philosophy. So when you've got Krauss, you've got to say no space, no time. That's a pretty good definition of nothing. But there's something in that nothing, but it's not nothing. No. See, you're still thinking empty set. And again, it's you have to go with baby steps.
Yeah. And of course, no theist will accept Krauss's version. But the bigger point here is that Philip is attempting to say, hey, we can use scientific predictions. But like you say, they could have had the discussion around whether scientific predictions are a valid means of looking at the beginning of the universe. But they didn't do that, and Shabir basically just, as I say, puts it to one side. Because Philip brought up the scientific method or the predictions as a possible method, in other words, as an argument against Shabir's claim that no scientific method can be used at the beginning of the universe. And Shabir outrightly dismisses this claim instead of questioning its validity, and then blankly asserts that Philip has to admit that we cannot apply the scientific method to the universe. And what I've written here basically is, imagine if Philip claimed that no scientific method could be used to try and establish how the first life on Earth arose, and Shabir suggested abiogenesis as a possible scientific theory that could be used using radio.
And obviously, when it comes to science, especially when you're learning science, it is sort of like having to learn another language, because scientists use words in what they mean in everyday usage. You know, sort of like we were talking about nothing earlier. No, but you're thinking it does. I mean, it's also like theory. You know, like if I was a random bloke down the pub and he said to me, I've got a theory about something, you know, I mean, I would understand that what I was saying, but just like I'd understand that if I was using the scientific method, he doesn't have a theory. But like religious people, particularly those at Hyde Park, they haven't sort of learned this new language because they don't even realize it's a different language. Yeah.
They will pick and choose science, and so they'll say it's induction when it suits them, and then they'll use the scientific method when it suits them, and it aligns with their point. But what I was basically saying is, imagine if Philip had done this the other way around, and just blankly, asserted, no, Shabir, we can't use radiocarbon dating. You just got to admit that there's no scientific method for the beginning of the universe. Shabir would rightly say, hang on a moment, you've got to address my abiogenesis claim. And that's exactly what you didn't do with Philip. And so you just don't outright dismiss another person's claim, you question it. And that was the whole sort of point here, is that they never had that discussion. And Shabir just went, hang on a moment, put it to a side, let's carry on, and you've got to agree with me. And I'm like, hang on a moment, that's not how you have a discussion. Let's move on from here, and we'll just listen to what happens now.
Katina. Yeah. Tell me what the scientific method is. Testing, verifying, falsifying. I just said all that. Apply that to the beginning of the universe. Thank you. Events in the past can have consequences for what's observable in the present, right? That's how forensics, for instance, works. Absolutely. Yes. When you talk about forensics, it is within the time frame where you can actually establish. So, 1 second. You have to go to a hypothesis. You can hypothesize these thoughts. This is
the audio is not so good. Basically, Philip, Shabir, because Isaac went in there and he fell into the trap of trying to explain the scientific method in the normal sense and not understanding what Philip was saying about the predictive model. Shabir then tried to catch him out. Okay, well, apply those falsifiability, observability to the beginning of the universe. And of course, he couldn't. And then Philip talks about how
Shabir doesn't understand what the predictive model is, though.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't understand the predictive model. Philip talks about it here, about forensics. So if you come across a murder scene, and it could, you could go back to Jack the Ripper times. If we had enough evidence now, we could go back and find out who Jack the Ripper was. The time frame isn't necessarily.
No, we actually have found out who Jack the Ripper was. He was a schizophrenic Polish hairdresser.
Yes.
This mystery has been solved.
Well, there you go. You see, so time in and of itself is not a barrier to scientific inquiry. But Shabir seems, because again he doesn't understand the predictive modeling, he seems to suggest that there's a time frame in which you can assert science, which obviously, even evolution then couldn't be true. We would never have worked out evolution. We wouldn't have all the evidence we have because it's millions of years old. So in Shabir's view, no, we can't use any of this stuff. Of course, the moment Philip says, hypothetically speaking, then Shabir says, if you want to go to hypothesis, we can hypothesize he's God. And then, of course, unfortunately, Isaac interrupts you and goes, which God? And then takes it off on a different point here. But there's one last little bit that I want to get to here, and then I'll just let it run to the end because there was just a little bit extra here that I thought was quite telling. So let's just listen to this last little bit here that Shabir talks about. So Isaac's going to ask what God here, and then there'll be another little bit here.
No, we can't. No, we can't. Yes, we can. Which God? There's hundreds of gods. Which one? Which one? Which God? Which God? You see, we can hypothesize. Which God are you talking about? Which God? Are you talking about the primitive? Are you talking about the primitive Arabic? Hypothesis. I'm challenging is your assertion that there's no way you can apply science whatsoever. I'm not sure. You said that. You're not even sure the full picture. I made it very clear that I think that the science, one of the scientific methods that you know, they must be applied to the beginning. The answer is yes. Now.
Okay, so that's the bit that I wanted to get in there. What Philip said there, you might not have heard it. He said, what I'm challenging is your assertion that there is no way you can apply science whatsoever. I'm not so sure about that. And Shabir says, I did not say that. I did not say that. You not being sure is one thing. I made very clear, and I repeated it, the scientific method as you know it cannot be applied to the beginning of the universe. The answer is yes. In other words, he's saying to you, you've got to agree with me, the answer is yes. And yet 25 seconds ago, and I went back and counted it, should be a question whether hypotheses are a valid method of scientific inquiry. Now he says he didn't say that. So 25 seconds ago he said yes it was. Now he says, I did not say that, I did not say that. And so he just, again, blanketly asserts that the scientific method, as you know it, cannot be applied to the beginning of the universe. The answer is yes. And so Shabir is not addressing Philip's claim. He quickly sidesteps addressing it. He just asserts that no form of scientific method can be used. What could he have done here instead? He could have said to Philip, justify why you, Philip, feels the scientific hypothesis is a valid method of scientific inquiry, which we could then actually have exposed Philip's position. But instead he sidestepped it and just didn't want to address it. Any thoughts from your guy's side?
So I'm too sidetracked by my...
I'm just thinking the only reason I can think of that he isn't being paid by Ira is like he'd be a threat to Hamza.
Yeah, but I've watched Hamza recently.
Take over his role as lead.
I was watching a couple of Hamza's videos, and Hamza is not a stupid guy. One can question his
Hamza Sorts.
honesty, etc.
Sorry about that ginger one.
But he's not a Hamza Sorts, I guess you're talking about. He's not a stupid guy by any stretch. He's definitely got some kind of philosophical training. Shabir's got none of that I can.
Are you talking about Hamza Sorts of Ira, or that one from Speaker's Corner, like the white one with the ginger beard?
Oh no, not Hamza Darren. Hamza Darren is the white guy with the ginger. Sorts is obviously.
So Sorts is saying Ira.
Yeah. Sorts, as far as I can see, is the smartest Muslim that I've seen, and I use them in inverted commas, obviously. But he's the smartest I've come across, certainly in the UK. In any case,
there is a guy. If you talk about smartest, there is a guy that is some. I think he's some. Have you seen the debate with Lawrence Krauss?
Yes.
I think he's a mathematician, isn't it?
Are you talking about the Tsortzis and Krauss debate?
No, not another guy. There's another
Muslim.
Anyway, yeah, he's a Muslim.
Okay. No. Point it out.
There are intelligent.
I'll watch that. If you can find that, put it in a link, and I'll have a look at that. I'm not that impressed with Krauss's philosophical views on things. Obviously, he's an expert on cosmology, but again, what I noticed with Krauss is he sidesteps philosophy. Instead of addressing some philosophical points, he dances around it. He had 3 debates with.
It's not his area of expertise. Ultimately, not a philosopher, he's a physicist.
Exactly.
He doesn't have any sort of real background in philosophy.
No,
but look, Karl Popper was a physicist too. That's not really an argument in itself. There are many physicists that I think are better philosophers than many philosophers. Yeah. So, but I agree that you can have your opinions, like like, sorry, I'm sidetracked by that. Yeah, but maybe that's like a topic we can have sometime, like the universe from nothing concept. I think it's way too big a topic to just talk about briefly.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in and of itself. Whenever I go to Speaker's Corner, then one of the first, because it's still an unknown from our point of view, where we don't have a solid answer, that's the go-to topic for most Muslims. So, and I've done it with Shabir as it happens. We talk about evolution. And he goes, no. I think we need to go back to how did evolution get started? And I said to him, Shabir, evolution is just about the diversification of species using the methodology of natural selection. No, but what we really need to do is go to a bigger view, and we need to establish how did evolution get started. And so this is their go-to argument for everything, is go back to how did the universe get started. And of course they use the Kalam.
Yeah, but again, they don't understand that. They don't understand evolution. They're like most of them, not all of them, because I've withdrawn some that I've come across that do understand. But most of them actually think that evolution also encompasses the origin of life, not just the origin of species. So again, you have to explain to them, no. It doesn't say how life began. It tells you what happened once there was life. Okay, so how did life begin?
Yes, and then we've got the theory.
Once it happened, once we had life, we know what happened. How did life itself begin? We don't know for sure yet.
No, exactly. So, there's three big things that I noticed that Muslims, because I speak mostly to Muslims, but religious people in general go for, and that is the beginning of the universe, how did life get started on Earth, and consciousness. Because we don't have very good ideas of those, so these are the questions that I'll ask. And honestly, from our point of view as non-believers, we would say we don't know. We could hypothesize, but because we don't know, they attempt to bring in their level of certainty. So you guys don't know. You see, science is just inductive, which means that, you can't dismiss God then as a hypothesis. And, that's where Occam's razor would come in, or that's where the belief in an extraordinary claim would come in. And I always say to them, hey, if I've got it.
Yeah, but I mean, again, when they actually say that they do know, like we have, like that you have is that because they actually have a book that tells you. So so as soon as they say, like, they talk about a Big Bang and all this and how the Earth happened, I mean, you could immediately say, okay, so you think that Earth existed before the universe and was split apart from heaven, which is obviously wrong. Or you think that the Earth volunteered to form itself from smoke, and because keep in mind, they don't really like to talk about what the texts say unless the text can be read in a way that can back up their arguments and seem to be true. So it's an advantage. We know what they believe. It's there in black and white, both what they want you to know and what they don't want you to know.
Yeah. And so, but they want to say, well, hey, because you guys don't know, and this is the conversation I had with Hamza Darren. Because I don't know the beginning of the universe, therefore I can't say that God is not one of the explanations. And I pointed out to Darren, I said to him, listen, imagine I said to you, I've got a fire-breathing flying dragon as a pet at home. What is your default position? Are you going to accept the claim, or are you going to reject the claim? What's your default position? And he goes, probably reject it. And I said, exactly. When you have an extraordinary claim, the default position should be one of rejection until there's good evidence and reasons. And therefore, God is an extraordinary claim. I don't know how the universe got started. Doesn't mean that your God is a good explanation or one that I should take seriously until you give me good evidence. That's the difference.
I just want to pick up on what you said just there, because what you said just there about your God and things like that. When you can't prove it's not God, so therefore blah blah blah. I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, get to a point to say I actually can pretty much prove that your God doesn't exist, because I mean, when they say God, they are talking about a specific God. If I was talking to a Hindu And we could talk about specific gods. You know, 1 minute we could be talking about Krishna, then we could be talking about Shiva, then we could be talking about Vishnu. These are very specific gods with very specific characteristics. It's exactly the same with Allah. Allah is a specific god who has a backstory, who has a character sheet, who has supposedly done things so that we can fact check. Now, I think one of the things I said recently is in the Astro religion,
Yes.
teaches in very ancient book, clouds of the brains of the clouds are not the brains of slain giants, as the gods of the Astro have claimed. That disproves them. Surely it must. So if you can actually disprove the Quran, if you can show that what the Quran says is true, is bullshit, which you can very easily, does that not then disprove the God of the Quran? It doesn't disprove every God. It doesn't mean that there's no God. Specific God. It's just when can you just like hold your hands up and say, you know what? Yeah, mate, I can show it's bullshit.
Well, then you're taking the strong atheist position, I think, which is now the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate that there's either absolutely or no good reason to believe it, which you could do if you, as you say, if you have enough evidence for that.
Like Adam and Eve, 90-foot giants made of clay, Noah's Ark, Moses. I mean, I can show these things.
I would be interested then if we can get a Muslim on where you and a Muslim can go head to head with us.
And was split from heaven. I can show there was never a great flood. I can show that Adam and Eve is bullshit. I can show these things. 400 years ago, I could have done none of that. Today, I can.
Well, I'd be interested then to get a Muslim on the show where you can do that, and somebody that has a reasonable knowledge and so forth, and see what his response is, because you're taking a stronger position there, which obviously you're entitled to do, if you believe that you've got overwhelming evidence that he doesn't exist, or are you only saying that certain claims are not true, and then is your assertion because the claims are not.
What I'm saying is, do you have to prove are not true to disprove this particular God? And again, I'm talking this particular God, this particular version of this particular idea of this one particular God. I
guess that's a question you have to ask a Muslim, because they could come back and say to you, well, if you falsify just one thing in the Quran, then it's all incorrect. Or they could say to you, if you happen to falsify one thing, that doesn't necessarily falsify Allah in his entirety, because it could be that Muhammad or somebody that wrote the Quran wrote something down incorrectly. And so it depends. Different Muslims may give you a different answer to that. If you can demonstrate that God claimed.
But then that does falsify the Quran, because the Quran itself says that this is the word of Allah, that it's uncorrupted, that it's perfect, and that all of it is true.
If that's the case, then yes, you could.
But I mean, to say that, I mean, just some things are false. I mean, let's say that there's someone years ago. Let's call him Dave, and there's a story about Dave, and the story goes that Dave is a 6'2" Muslim warrior, right? 6'2" Muslim warrior, and like a version of Spartacus or something like that. And there's this legend about him, and we don't know for sure if he actually exists or if it's historically accurate, but we have this idea of him. And then it turns out, not only do we get proof that Dave actually did exist, we actually find that the historic Dave was actually morbidly obese, diabetic,
Raven, can you stop your video there? I'm losing you. I can't hear you clearly. It's like you're coming and going. I think your video upstream is slowing down or stopping your audio from coming through clearly.
Yeah, it's off now. Is it any better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I said is, if you can actually, if you've got a story about Dave, the great 6'2" Muslim warrior from 1,000 years ago, that is the idea of Dave that we have, and the idea of Dave that we believe in. And then you show actually Dave did exist, but he was a 5'5" diabetic Trinitarian, it shows the Dave as described. So if you I mean, just taking this argument that some things in the Quran are falsifiable, then that therefore follows that exist. He's not the God we think he is, which again means the God we think he is, the God as described in the Quran, does not exist. Just like Dave, the 6 foot whatever Muslim warrior, didn't exist. The actual Dave was a 5'5" morbidly obese diabetic Trinitarian.
I mean, from your position and my position, yes, I think that's easily done. In my experience, talking to people in speakers,
but that would falsify Dave. That would show that would show that the popular idea of Dave, it isn't real.
Yes, with Dave, it's true. I'm not sure that translates over to Allah and the claims in the Quran. Only in the sense that, from my experience, these guys have got an answer for everything. So, you and I would go, yes, of course, that makes sense, like their scientific claims. That's easily refuted. But a couple of the smart ones, and I say that in inverted commas, step back from trying to claim that the Quran has got any scientific miracles. Occasionally they'll bring it up, still I notice, with people who don't know a lot, but they wouldn't bring it up with me or like you. And so they'll step away from that. But most of the claims in the Quran, they've got an answer to that seems satisfactory. Now to us, it'll go, hang on a moment, what you said is absolutely right. For them, they've got an answer that's satisfactory. So I'm not sure that you can falsify it to the degree that you're hoping you can and get them to agree with you, where they go, do you know what? You're absolutely
it's not
right.
necessarily falsify it to that degree is casting doubts upon it. I mean, it's not that Dave never did exist. It's that we're wrong about him. So it's not even necessarily that the God of Abraham. It's just if they do, Islam's got it wrong.
Well, I'm going to try very hard. I'm not going down to Speaker's Corner for a couple of weeks. Got family commitments, etc. But what I'm going to try and do is get somebody like Mohammed or one of those guys, the tall guy, or one or two of the other guys. I'm going to invite them onto the show and say, hey, guys, give me your email address. Come onto the show. We'd love to ask you this. And hopefully you can be there and you can have this discussion. I'll let people know if I'm able to get one of these guys on so that you can hear the responses. I think they will always have a response.
I really hope so. Just yesterday, one of those Speaker's Corners, the Dawa channels, like Titans TV or whichever one it was, they just mentioned that they were trying to put some sort of like online debate group together. Yesterday, saying never heard the Jinn&Tonic show, a show about Islam yet. Sadly, very rare a Muslim would come. Come on.
Oh, so were you in contact with them?
Doing my little bit to help.
Oh, cool. Because I know the guy that does the filming for Titans TV down at, I actually don't know his name, but I regularly see him there.
Titans TV was one of those channels. It might have been Titans.
Yeah, because I know he does do debates, but he normally does it on sort of African topics and stuff. A couple that I've seen, because I'm subscribed to Titans TV. But if we can get a couple of Muslims together to have that conversation, particularly a couple that know a few things like Muhammad or a few of the others, be it Mansour or whoever, then you can have that sort of dialogue. I'm just not sure if they're prepared to come on. We could have the Dawa guys on, but again, I'm not sure. I'll do my best. Next time I go down, I'll ask Ali, I'll ask Muhammad, a couple of the guys, hey, do you want to come online and have a discussion? We've got a show. You can come on, you can give your views, etc., and see whether they can do that.
Yeah, and maybe also throw in there about how Muhammad would actually go to synagogues and go to debate Jews, and like he actually invited some Christians to come debate him in his mosque. So maybe sprinkle it with something like that.
Yeah, anything, I'll say, look, come along. There's respect there. Obviously, we're going to question you like we would in Speaker's Corner. Or invite me onto your channel. I've got a couple of guys I know, like you guys that are on here. Bring along a couple of the guys that I know. We'll come to your, if you got one. Because I know the London Dawa guys used to have a channel. I don't know if they still do. That used to run at some point. You probably know more about it than I do.
I actually don't.
Okay.
I think one of the things in general when it comes to Islam, and particularly when it comes to like debating Islam and apologist claims and things like that, even though the UK isn't particularly religious, even when you have atheists, they tend to be the term Christian atheists. You know, they can debate the Bible, they can debate against a Catholic or a Protestant, don't really know anything about Islam, and they go in there sort of thinking the type of arguments that might work against Christians would work against Muslims, which isn't always the case.
Yeah, that's true. Obviously, Muslims have got a few different things. Obviously, there's no Trinity in there, and that's obviously their big attack against Christians. I do notice, however, which I find somewhat amusing, is that I notice some of the Muslims obviously borrowing the Christian arguments, the ones that are generic, they borrow, be it the Qur'an,
Christian apologetics are light years ahead of Islamic apologetics.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, it's also, you know, it's got to be said that when you do debate someone, particularly a believer, the kind of what you will actually debate and the arguments that both will use really depends on the view of the believer. Like what I was just talking about earlier about falsifying claims, that only works, believe it a certain way. If you're a Muslim and you say, well, I actually don't think that's a literal thing. I think it's just like metaphor, allegory, poetry. Arguments fall apart. I mean, I can say, well, what's the point? But every argument I've made thus far immediately falls if they say, I don't take it literally.
Correct. But most Muslims I come across do tend to take the Quran quite literally. I mean, you'll get a few that will try and pick out a few things, but generally speaking, they, especially the ones that, you know, Muhammad and Mansur and that lot, they tend to take it literally, and then they've got an argument to back up why they think it's literally true. When you ask on bigger questions, be it equality of women, now they'll give you their interpretation. And so, yeah, it depends on who you're speaking to, but most Muslims will attempt to take the Quran literally because they think it's the word of God, whereas Christians think it's inspired by God. So it's like a general message. It doesn't need to be taken literally. So they can sidestep the figurative and literal much easier than Muslims can. But what Muslims have got going for them is they've got words that can mean 15 different things. So in a sense, they have got a lot of elasticity in the meaning of certain words, whereas obviously they're much more strict with what the Quran actually says in terms of taking it literally. They can interpret it still in their version literally, but with a different meaning.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the idea of you know, two literalists that read the Quran literally but still take different meanings from it.
Yes, exactly. You know, one of the classics I had, again, a debate with Shabir. I was too kind. When I look back at my debates, I'm far too generous. I let them talk for a long time, but B, I'm not. I look at it and go, oh, I should have said X, Y, and Z. In the sense of like I let them get away with things.
I think everyone kind of feels that though, don't they? It's like, you know, oh, in hindsight, I could have said such and such, but hey,
it's good for me though. It's a good learning for me because next time I go, I'll catch that, and so it's very good for me to look back at what I've said and what other people have said. If I were to have a debate again with Shabir, and I've seen him a couple of times since in Speaker's Corner, and we kind of say hi to each other, but I just don't. I wish I could have more conversations with him, but I just feel like it'll be 50 minutes, and I'll walk away there going, I had 50 minutes of time wasted that we just never got anywhere. And so that's the main reason now I just don't feel like I can have a, you know, with Muhammad, let's say, or Mansur, or any of the other guys, I could have a debate and, yeah, we still won't agree, but at least we can put our points. And even Hamza for that matter, Darren Hamza. What I do like about Hamza, you know, and again, he's straight to the point. He'll answer a question, exactly the opposite of Shabir, who won't answer a direct question. He'll go around the houses. So if I ask Darren something or Hamza something, he'll give me an answer, you know, whatever it may be. I can't get that from Shabir in any meaningful, concise way. And so it becomes like 50 minutes of going around the houses and forgetting almost what the original point was that we started to debate. And so we just don't get anywhere. And the same thing happened with Philip here. You know, in this particular conversation, you'll hear a couple of times Philip goes, what are we talking about again? And Shabir will use this tactic of, you know, the claim that you made, you don't even remember what you were making. But he said so many things that he's thrown Philip off track here. And so Philip doesn't remember what the specific claim was because it's been going around the houses. And so, you know, it's just not helpful to keep on track.
I mean, have you seen Zakir-Naik?
I've seen a couple of these things talking. He's awful. I mean, he's good in the sense that he understands the Quran and he can quote the verses. But I've
no, he's not. Is only when it comes to manipulation. You know, I mean, the thing about Zakir Naik is he's a blatant liar. He's a con man. He's a snake oil peddler. I mean, he actually what he will do. You ask him a question, right? He'll say, first of all, he'll say, "Brother makes a good point," and second, he'll say, "The Quran does say that. It does describe it in chapter 2, verse 24. Verse 12 to 13. It describes these things." So fast and with such passion, everyone believes him. No one ever looks it up, and all the monkeys clap.
Yeah, I think we should.
Time as I have done. I've actually watched Zakir Naik videos because I've had apologists link them to me. They don't link them to me no more because they know I destroy it. I actually pause the video, make a note. Right. So what surah and verse was it? Okay, I'll look it up. And it's bullshit. It's always bullshit. And then I actually say to these people, you haven't actually looked up the verses yourselves, have you? They never have. And then when I actually show it's bullshit, it's so easy. Just fact checking. Fact checking. It's so easy to do, and so few people do it.
That's what we should do live sometime. Take a Zakir Naik video and dissect it. If you have prepared fact check things, you can take one of the videos
that you can have maybe for next time, where you've got a video that we can run through. You can host it and run it, and then we can look through a video like that.
I've never even. I don't even know how to do it. I don't even know how to host it, and I've got no clue how to.
But you don't have to. You don't have to host it.
You can YouTube, and then that uploads.
That's fine. I mean,
I'm actually pretty much like an IT retard. It's like I know how to search for something on Google. I know how to hit download on something. That's like the extent of the knowledge. I would make YouTube videos, but I don't know how. Well, to be fair, I could look it up.
But you can send us a link, and then we can play it. But if you have fact checked it before, it could be useful because then we can do it much faster.
Well, I can do that, but I mean, it doesn't even have to be me hosting, really. I mean, Rob, you've got me on Skype.
No, but as long as you're here on the show, or at least
so you need to be on the show. I can run it and pause it every so often, and then you talk over it.
You've got me on Skype, so if there ever is a particular idea you have, you could just IM me and I can look it up. Or, if you prefer, you could someone could just tell me how to do the Hangout thing.
I mean, we're happy to host it, and you just come on as you have now. I'll run a video and stop it at certain points, and then we can talk over it just like we've done now. I just had some of the stuff prepared for this particular video because I was interested in this particular conversation. By the way, if people are interested, I'll put in the chat here as well another video. So what happened is this video still runs on for a few moments, and then Isaac, the black guy, takes over, and Philip gets pushed aside. But there's a second video that runs for 37 minutes. I'm going to pop that into the main chat here of the Jinn&Tonic show, that people can go watch. This is a longer one. If you want to go and see a second one, I'll put it into the main chat, and I'll put it into our one.
Oh, just before you, sorry, just before we get on to the next video, I just wanted to quickly correct you on something. I can't remember if it was last week on a show or when, but you made a comment about Kia.
If I did.
I can't remember what the comment was. I think it was it's mostly Sunnis you talk to. I'm not sure if they're practicing Taqiyya, but they seem genuine. Taqiyya is actually a Shia practice. It's not a Sunni practice. What Taqiyya basically is that historically Shias were persecuted by Sunnis, right?
Yes.
Taqiyya is a Shia practice. It basically says if your life is in danger, it's permissible to lie and say you're a Sunni. Is what Taqiyya is.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where they come from. But pragmatically, they are kind of using it anyway. But that's
in Sunni Islam, there are three situations, I believe, where it's permissible to lie. One lie would be to keep the harmony of the house. You could say to your wife, "This beautiful woman in the world," you might have seen other women you think are more beautiful, but it's sort of like, it's a nice thing to say. Another way to lie is peace between two groups. The time it's permissible to lie is during war.
No, there are like, you can lie in certain. If you have a certain.
But you're talking about the idea of
Sunni
softening
Islam
the
also,
hearts.
but taqiyya is specific for Shia. But you can lie in certain, like in war. What is it more? I think there are 3.
But I mean, there is certain practices when it comes to the idea of softening the heart. It's not necessarily so much lying as it is leaving things out.
Yeah, but that's not lying.
It's sort of like what a load of Dawa people do when talking to people that have got no idea about Islam, but try and get a conversion out of them, and they give them, like, they tell them certain things, and it's a very sugar-coated way, and it's when they've actually got them to, they've actually got the shahada out of them, and it's like, oh, by the way, also, it's like then they just dump the rest of it on them.
Yeah. That's how nice they are.
I don't think that's actually I'm not sure if that's actually an Islamic practice, so, and it's not something exclusive to Muslims. When it actually comes to like things like taqiyya and deception, I think, funnily enough, I think it was back in 2011, the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain did a poll, and I think 74% heard of it before, and the rest of them had heard it in passing, but. Like it wasn't something that they were taught, I mean, it's not true. Muslims uniquely are taught to lie or be deceitful. I mean,
well,
some Muslims
there are
lie,
hadiths like the Prophet Muhammad said the war is deception, for example, and since they apply war to a lot of things,
it's not a sneaky thing. I can show you a video of British troops in World War II. Using deception. They used inflatable tanks
I agree,
to make the enemy think they had more arms than they did.
I agree.
People seem to have this idea.
Not, but I mean, they apply the
Muslims is an inherent dishonesty, and it's just not true.
No. No. But I mean,
no,
they have an ability to like reinterpret what situation is war in a like very creative way. So even if they're living in like Western countries and are working there and maybe even paying taxes, they interpret the situation as a state of jihad. So they're living there, but at the same time they are kind of cheating and lying and sending money to jihadi organizations. But this is this is a small group, but people like what was this Abu Hamza or something, guys like that. This one-eyed guy with a hook.
But when it comes to actual deception, now, I mean, again, it's not the thing. I mean, to actually give like an example of it during the time of Muhammad, in what was the name? Ammar bin Yasir, I think. Is brutally killed Yasir and his wife Samaria, faith, and they're known as the first martyrs of Islam. And when the parents were killed, Ammar pretended to renounce Islam, his life, and someone said to Muhammad, Ammar has become a kafir. Well, no, never. Verily, the flesh and blood of Ammar is saturated with true faith, or something like that. Look at a lot of these ideas about when it comes for to lying. Objectively, it's actually something that pretty much everyone does. It's not really much different than going along with a child. Like, yeah, of course Santa Claus exists. Or, no, darling, of course I don't think your ass looks fat in that. It's just something like deception in war, which pretty much every fucker does throughout history and still does today.
I mean, it's quite possible. The thing is, we're never going to know, and so we can assume that they're all doing it, or we can take a charitable approach and go, hey, they believe what they say. So maybe I'm naive, whatever the case is. I take a charitable approach when I go to Speaker's Corner, and I think, okay, what Muhammad, Mansour, Hasim, whoever it is that I'm speaking to, they actually believe what they're saying. I don't think, until it can be proven otherwise, that they come there and they just say these things, but they go back and go, that's not what I really believe. I think what they're saying there is what they really believe. I could be wrong, but it seems to be, because they say the same thing every single time. So, if they're lying, eventually you'll catch them out, because they'll say different things. But on the same topic, they keep saying the same thing. Now, it may be that they're just very practiced at it, but I tend to think that the people in Speaker's Corner anyway actually believe what they say so they actually believe that Islam is not, for example, doesn't make women different to men. They're not unequal. They actually think, and they can attempt to give a justification, no matter how unfeasible it is, that, hey, Islam treats women the same as men.
Well, no, it doesn't treat women the same as men. I don't think any Muslim would make that claim. It's not that women are... the argument would be, it's not that women are unequal, it's that Allah has given us different roles.
Yeah, but then when you question it a bit more and you go, hey, what about what happens when there's a divorce? What happens when a woman, quote, disobeys a man? What happens then? And can a man disobey a woman? Then you find out, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, hang on a moment, they can, and here's the reasons why, but it doesn't work both ways. And so... you're right.
That's when you have to actually get right down to the argument. Yeah. There's a hadith, and I swear to Christ, this is an authentic hadith, right? That actually says, you could be a man, you could be covered in sores with pus covering your entire flesh, and your wife, every bit of pus from your body, and she still wouldn't have repaid the debt that you owe her. And it's this huge thing about it's just like a massive fuck you women thing. You know what? I'm actually going to look it up right now about pus hadith.
Yeah, check it out.
It's actually
Raven, I don't know if you want to reconnect or if you've got other programs running, but every now and again words are dropping, so I'm not hearing you clearly non-stop. It's like, even with your video, Wolf, well, yeah, and it sounds a bit like that. So I don't know if you've got any other programs that are running, taking up bandwidth on your computer, but you're not coming through clearly here.
Yeah, I think you should restart.
I'll just copy and paste it, and you can read it out if you want.
Alassa was asking, is this going to be... thank you. Is this show going to be on Sunday? No, it's going to be on Friday, 8 p.m. UTC from now on. We will test this and see what happens. Yeah, because Friday is like the Saturday in the Middle East. We hope maybe we will get some more Muslims if we have this time.
How are we going to get more Muslims if they don't know about it, though? So, to me, we've got to learn people.
Everybody should invite Muslims, and especially you guys that live in the UK. You have a lot of...
Rob, if I was cutting out, I don't know if you wanted to just read either of those hadiths if I'm cutting.
Yeah, can you read it?
Where is it? Okay, so what hadith is this?
It's the first one is recorded in Ahmad by Al-Mazriya, and then I'll put it at the bottom where you can find it. If I'm cutting out, maybe you'd like to just read it out loud for the benefit of the audience.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So this is supposed to be a authentic hadith.
It's that pus hadith. When it comes to
okay. Okay, so the hadith says, it is not permissible for a human being to prostrate to another human being. Were it permissible for a human being to prostrate to another human being, I would have commanded the woman to prostrate to their husband because of his great right upon her. By the one in whose hand is my soul, if he, the husband, had from his feet to the top of his head an ulcer oozing blood and pus, and she came to lick it off for him, she would still not have fulfilled his right. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me, because it's basically saying at the top there that it's not permissible for one human to prostrate another. And so, but if it was, then this would be the case. So it's almost like a hypothetical that if it was, this would be what would need to happen.
And then like that in Ahmad and Al-Nizira, no. And then the second hadith, if I cut out, I'm sure Rob can fill in. A husband's right upon his wife is such that if he had an ulcer and she licked it for him, his right by that. So it's just a shortened hadith, and this is recorded in Al-Hakim and Ibn Khaban. Not Haban.
Okay.
Raven, could you kind of restart your computer or something, because you're cutting out all the time?
Yeah, sure. I'll restart now. Sorry.
No problem. It's just...
Yeah, we're just missing some of your words, so you're not come through clearly, so we can keep up with what you're saying. There's just a couple of words dropping.
Probably, unless the connection is really bad. Yeah, have we looked at the whole video?
As much as we need to, I think. Just to carry on from there, I don't think we can get much further. Because then Philip, but go watch the whole thing. I'll put the links into the chat there of the original video. Then there's a second video where they go and speak separately to each other again. And one of the other things I noticed was Shabir, he brings up hypotheticals, or he brings up analogies. And whenever he does this, in my humble opinion and experience, they are very bad and they don't help. In fact, they sidetrack a conversation. So if you watch the second video there with Philip, he brings up like a hypothetical of a robot within, like it's this ball of creation, and it doesn't know who its creator is, and so on. And it just confuses things. And Philip quite rightly asked some questions, because again, Shabir's hypotheticals are very vague and just nebulous. And so you've got to ask questions to get to certain points. If you go and watch one of my videos with Shabir, where we're talking about homosexuality, he tries to bring up this example. Listen to this. I don't know if you've watched this. So I asked him about homosexuality. Is it right or wrong in Islam? His response was basically, it's right up until a point, and then it goes beyond that. And then it goes into the realm of negativity, was the word he used. And I went, okay. And then I kind of wanted more of an explanation. And he tried to give me an analogy. And he went basically, what would you do if you met a woman and she was very depressed and you had sex with her to save her life? Would you tell your wife? And I stopped for a moment. I went, okay, let me just understand what you're saying here. This was his example. I said, what was the consequences of not having sex with her? He goes, no, she'd commit suicide. I went, okay, that's a ridiculous example, because you could promise that and then not do it, and you could find other ways to not do it. But let's go with your ridiculous example. Yes, if a woman said to me, Rob, I'm depressed, the only way that I'm not going to kill myself right now is if you have sex with me, and I did it, would I tell my wife? Absolutely. And he looks at me, it's in the video, and he goes, ha, you've got to, no man would do that. I had to press him on the specifics of what the example was.
What a weird example.
Go watch it. You won't believe this is the example that he gives. And that was the one that was the same video that I did.
What kind of man kind of invent those kinds of examples? It sounds it's so absurd.
It was to try and show that my morality wasn't good and his was, in some sense. But when I pressed him for specifics, then it came out that the example, this is what I mean, is that the analogy is awful. So I'm always, and he did it with me with this example of a mobile phone as well. The last time we spoke, if you go look at my channel, you'll see it. It's just very unhelpful. So as soon as he brings up an analogy, I'm going, oh my goodness, this is not going to help us. In fact, it's going to sidetrack us and go off in a different direction. But what does amaze me is that I get Muslim commentators going, Rob, he's just so far ahead of you, you can't keep up. And I'm going, well, maybe that's true. I don't think so, but maybe it's true. But if that were the case, that he's such an advanced, clever, amazing guy, and we were having a conversation, and I said to him, Shabir, this doesn't help me, would the would it not be a good thing to go, okay, Rob, let me make it simple for you because you're a simple-minded guy. Let me make it simple for you because I'm so advanced. I'm thinking 15 steps ahead of you. Let me make it simple for you. If I try to give you an analogy and you said to me, Rob, I don't understand, I'll go, let me see if I can make it a different way so that we can be on an understanding. And this is the sort of response that I get from people. No, it's almost like he's worshipped, even though they shouldn't be worshipping another human being. There's nothing he can say that is wrong in any way. And I'll have commentators trying to defend him in the most absurd ways possible.
But was this the same guy that we saw in the video?
Yes, that's the same guy that I've had about 5 or 6 conversations. If you go and look at the Speakers Corner UK channel, the first time I had a conversation was actually reasonably okay. And subsequently we had 3 or 4 more, and eventually my last conversation with him was, okay, Shabir, I wanted to bring up to you the way that you have these debates. I feel that certain of your tactics aren't helpful. And then obviously he defended himself and then tried to give this mobile phone analogy, which just went off the rails. And eventually I just went, okay, we're getting nowhere here. And since I've not spoken to him since then.
Do you remember we talked about Sam Harris, the moral landscape last time?
Yes, yeah.
So if you use his example, where on the moral landscape do you find this guy's example? If there is a depressed woman, I mean, I'm not laughing at depression, I'm not laughing at suicide because that's serious stuff, but I just find it a bit absurd that in order for her to not commit suicide, you have to have sex with her.
Now I think in his brain, because he tried to elaborate on it later on, where he's saying, you'll be surprised how many times this happens in court. And I'm going, well, what has this got to do with our conversation about homosexuality and the example that you're giving there? How is that in any way related? And I think he tried to pick this because he might have heard it in court or something like that, where somebody's trying to make up this excuse, and so he was trying to give me this made up example to go, okay, what would I do in this scenario?
He heard in a court.
Yeah, you'll hear in the video. He kind of talks about, you'll be surprised how often this happens in court, and I'm guessing what he means is
a man. In what scenario?
The scenario he talked about, where somebody goes, the woman was depressed and she said she'll kill herself, so I had to have sex with her. So I think he must have heard this.
Yeah, right. Does that happen? I doubt that.
Well, whether it happens or whether people have made that excuse or not, I think most thinking people go, that's absolutely ridiculous.
But who made the excuse? The guy that had sex with her?
Obviously, yeah. But I think this was, but he brought up this example to try and either trap me or to try and expose my morality. And so I went with it. Firstly, obviously, I pointed out that it was a ridiculous example, but I went, okay, let's go with your example. Let's assume that everything you said is true. What would I tell my wife? Yes, I would. Why would I tell my wife? Because I'd say to her, hey, honey, I've just saved a woman's life. What's worse, me having sex or me saving somebody's life? And so in my world, it's if that ridiculous example was actually real, what would I do? Yes, I would tell my wife. And you know what? She would accept it. She'd go, you know what, Rob? Firstly, she'd laugh at me, obviously, because she'd go, that's a crazy example, which she did when I told her. But she went, you know what? If that was really the only case, she was like, in practice, she was about to jump out the window and you kind of had sex halfway out the window because that's the only way you'd save her. You have to try and think, how would this actually work in practice? It's ridiculous. But yes, I would tell my wife. He went, no, I wouldn't tell my wife.
I don't know I don't think that has ever happened in the history of mankind.
No, but my whole point is whenever Shabir brings up analogies or examples or tries to, bring something like that, it's not often helpful. In fact, it's diversionary and totally unhelpful.
I mean, you can use some other alternative. If you have sex with, you can you can just tie her to a chair or something, and then
yes, you can say, hey, I'm going to have sex with her. And the moment she turns around, you can grab her, pick up the phone, and go, hey, police, I've got somebody who's depressed. I pretended I was going to have sex. There's a million different things you can do rather than have sex. So in practice, it's a crazy example. But his main point was, would I tell my wife if that
But in what way? I don't understand. What has this to do with the homosexuality debate? But
Please explain that to me. That's my whole point. His main example, which has been countered by other people on YouTube, his main example as to why homosexuality is wrong is because it doesn't happen in nature. When, of course, we know very well that there's many different animals where homosexuality is normal in nature. It's a small percentage, but it is normal. So if it happens in nature, there's no reason why it doesn't happen it can't happen in humanity, as we're part of nature. That's his main thing.
Sorry, I was sidetracked. Mr. Smiley said, most discussions with atheists lead to the atheist saying there's nothing morally wrong with me having sex with my own daughter. It seems that's where the objective morality discussion always lead to. I don't know if he's being ironic here. Or...
No, that's interesting, actually, because I did have that discussion with another Muslim. Again, you have a look at my channel. There's another Muslim. And again, I'm happy to have discussions with just about anybody. I don't see the point in having any more discussion with Shabir because we don't get very far. But there's another video on my channel, if you go and watch it, with a guy who's a smart ass. Now you can immediately see when somebody's like a playground. It's like a bully who's trying to come and show you up, to try and show you how stupid you are and how smart he is. If you go and look at my channel, there's a particular video where there's this guy that comes out. I'm asking guys about the beginning of the universe, and I'm questioning how this happens, etc. So they bring over this guy called Hassan. I think he's from Barbados or somewhere like that. He's gone there for 10 years. He thinks he's a smart ass. Okay, so thinks a lot of himself, thinks he knows it all. So he came over to have this conversation. So I'd seen him once before, but I didn't know him. So we had this conversation. So I asked him about the universe. He didn't understand it. And he couldn't really answer it. And then he was dying to get onto this. And so he asked me about incest. And so we started to have this conversation about incest. If you go look on my channel, I've got the entire video from the start where I asked him about the universe to the end about incest. If you look on his channel, it's something like Street. I can't think of it at the moment, but
Street Episode.
No, it's Street Dean. Dean or something like that. Anyway, he's a very dark-skinned guy, and we had this discussion. But it goes to the point that was being made here about objective morality always leads down to this incest thing. And so he put on his channel just the part about incest, and I said to him, "Hey, that's not." You're being very disingenuous. We had a long conversation where I asked you about the universe. Then you only put on the bit where you think you look good, trying to trap me with incest. So his basic point was, do I think it's right or wrong if there's a family and they are of consent age, so 18 years old, do I think it's okay if a mother sleeps with her daughter and a father sleeps with his son, for example, and they're 18 years old? And I said to him, I don't see anything wrong with it. If there's some reason why it's wrong, I'm happy to say it's wrong. And so he kept pressing me on this point. Would you fight for it? He goes, you atheists. And so the whole point was to go, oh, well, you're okay with incest, therefore you're immoral. I'm moral because it says so in the book. And I put the challenge out, and I still have the challenge out to anybody, and I'm happy to change my mind.
But it doesn't say that.
Give me some objective reasons why incest with where there's no actual sexual intercourse taking place, in the sense that there'll be no children involved, births or anything like that. Tell me why it's objectively wrong. If you can give me a good scientific reasons why it's wrong, I'm happy to change my mind. I'm still waiting for somebody to do it. All they go is, it's wrong because a book says so, because it feels yucky. Well, I agree, it feels yucky.
The book doesn't say that, though.
Well, they claim it does. But
okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do a little bit of role play. Like, let's say that you're this Barbados guy. Try it with me.
Well, I'm not that good at it, but I'll try it then. So you're an atheist. Tell me this. In your worldview, would you accept it if there are a family and you've got consenting children who are 18 years old? Is it okay for a father to sleep with his son and a mother to sleep with their daughter?
Well, first of all, I'd just point out that it's nothing to do with being an atheist and fuck.
No, but it is because you atheists, you've got no morals. You think everybody can do anything they want as long as it doesn't harm anybody. So I want to know from you as an atheist, do you think it's right or wrong?
What exactly is wrong with that, though? What exactly is wrong with the idea that if it doesn't bring harm, then it's none of your business? That is probably the definition of what morality is. I mean, even Islam would make these claims. What is halal and haram ultimately stems from the idea of harm. There's no harm.
Well, they claim,
As
and
for
I don't
whether
know
or
in the Quran.
as for whether or not you want to talk to me about incest, I mean, first of all, I will actually point out, Quran allows incest. You know, I mean, like Muslims make up like what, 5% max of population in the UK, and yeah, I think about 33% and growing of the babies born with severe disabilities because of incestuous unions.
Yeah, but the Muslims at Speaker's Corner will claim that they're all immoral. Those people that are committing incest, it's wrong because the Quran says so.
No. They want to talk about it. They want to talk about it from a genetic level. Islam is absolutely fine with incest, so long as it's cousins. First cousins is fine. And now, if someone wants to say to me that's not incest, I would say to them, are you seriously telling me that if you watch your children's children, your grandkids going around fucking each other and knocking each other up, that's not incest? Yeah, but see, it's like with Adam and Eve because the genetics. No. This only works because of genetic variety. If you want to say it's disgusting because of every reason you're giving, exactly how many times with your cousin before on a genetic biological level it's basically knocking up your sister? You know, and I could just point out a fact. I could actually say for a fact, yes. And also, it's got nothing to do with being atheist. I could talk about loads of incestuous things. I could talk about the very religious people in some parts of South Africa that have this tradition that if a boy and a girl is sometimes twins, it's tradition for them to be married because the idea is that they were created to be together. I could talk about how in ancient Egypt, the pharaohs with the idea of keeping the bloodlines pure.
Okay, but
they would actually separate the daughters and then like bring them together as adults to do this. It has nothing to do with incest. And if you want to say to me that doesn't have incest, 3 questions. Number 1, Adam and Eve. Okay, but God forbid it after that. Really? So why did he do it again in Noah's Ark? We had to come from, I mean, all of us, the entire human race had to come from incestuous unions, not once, but twice. And third, 3% of disabled children are disabled in this country because of incestuous Islamic life.
Okay, but you're not defending the point from your point of view of why it's right or wrong in your point of view. You're pointing to why Islam says it's right. Assume for a moment that they say it's wrong and they could point out why it's wrong. So that line of questioning, I understand you could challenge somebody on that, but assume that he thinks it's wrong. He can point to the Quran as to why it's wrong. And so from his point of view, the Quran says it's wrong, therefore it's wrong. You must now tell me.
Because every argument you make about incest, when it comes to brother or sister or mother or son, I can make the exact same argument about cousins. I mean, if it's just like if it's like or something like that, then chances are there's not really going to be that much difference. But like I said, if you actually have like an actual habit of doing family members, you know, whichever way you look at it, fucking your own blood is incest. And how many generations, how many times can you do it before, even though you're cousins, you're so closely related on a genetic level, it'll be no different to knocking up your sister.
Right. So let me ask it to you the way he asked it to me, and then because I understand what you're saying, but it's not answering, and maybe I didn't ask you the question correctly. It's not answering the question that was asked of me, which is is it okay or is it not okay from your point of view as an atheist for a father to have sex with his son or to have sex with his daughter if he's using protection and there's no child that's coming from this sexual union? Is it okay or is it not okay, and why?
Neither.
I think we have to wrap this discussion up. Maybe I don't think we're coming.
I would say neither, because atheism isn't actually a thing. It doesn't actually exist. There is no atheist Bible. There is no atheist Pope. Whether or not I'm fine with incest has nothing to do with me being an atheist. And also, whether or not he's fine with incest.
Yeah.
I mean,
Stop spamming says this all the time, like it doesn't imply. I think you're cutting out again, Raven. I don't know what. Maybe you should clean up.
Yeah,
on your computer or
Detective
something.
Inspector Monkfish is on. He's a very smart guy. So welcome, Detective Inspector Monkfish. We're just coming towards the end now. He makes a good point. No point defending morality on a secular basis. They will always find it laughable. Better to attack their account with the Euthyphro dilemma. Which, for those people who don't know, the Euthyphro dilemma, which I think most of us do, but is something good because God commands it, or is it good because of God's nature? I think, is that the right way of putting it? Is it good because God commands it, or is it good
Because
spite
it's
of
good
God?
in itself.
How do you do that? Because I know that the typical response to this, no, there's the third argument, which is that it's God's nature to be good. So they attempt to avoid the Euthyphro dilemma by just stating or asserting that God's nature is good. But
that again is sort of like, remember before when I was saying that when it comes to science, it's kind of like learning a new language. Again, when talking to believers, it's also kind of like using a language. What God does is by fault morally acceptable because it's God. The idea is that he's our creator, therefore our owner, and knows what's best for us. Qur'an, Allah raped a baby because God did it.
You're cutting out again, Raven. We don't hear every word. Are we supposed to have some news today?
If it said in the Quran that Allah raped a baby.
Where does it say that?
No, it doesn't say. It say if it said,
It
should
doesn't.
it be good?
If it said that, they would justify
But
it.
then they would say he would never command that because he is good and he only commands what is good.
Yeah,
and
but
so
they would give an example of, well, there's a good reason why, and we can't question God. We don't know the bigger picture, so there will always be an excuse as to. It doesn't matter what would be commanded. There would be a reason. God knows best. We don't know the whole picture. Therefore, yes, it's right because we can't question God, type of thing, or we don't know God's mind. I do think you're right. I think it's time to pack it up.
do you have any news?
No, I don't. I mean, this ran on, and I didn't prepare any news. I will do for next time.
I found one news from that maybe is, but I don't know. A Scandinavian news. I posted a link there in the comments. If you can show it, I don't know if you should show it. But there was. Do you know this Saint Lucy? Do you know it's a saint from the town of Syracuse, I think, in Sicily. So in Sweden, they have this weird tradition every year, the 13th of December, that they like the children dress up in weird costumes, and one of them is supposed to be Saint Lucy. And then they sing songs, and they have like a crown of candles and everything. So there was a dispute among people who is allowed to be Saint Lucy. Like there was I think it was immigrant boy that dressed up as Saint Lucy, and a lot of racists got angry and so on. But then, like the Nationalist Party's youth organization, I'm not sure they are their youth organization still, made a drawing of Prophet Muhammad and Aisha. So immediately they got bomb threats.
Yeah, that's typical.
So this is the level of the discourse.
I was wondering, did anyone check out that two-part BBC documentary, Muslims Like Us?
No, is it available outside?
Yeah, you can look it on YouTube. It's part 1 and part 2. It was
put a link into the
basically
chat
like
and we'll
the
have a look.
Islamic Big Brother. It was 9 days.
Put a link into the chat if you can, Raven, and people can have a look at it.
Hang on.
We've got to wrap up now anyway. I think we've been going for 2 hours.
Did you see that hadith from... Oh, I want just to say, correct some things from the last show. See if I find it. Wait a minute. We were talking about like Nietzsche quotes. So I said this quote, and those who were seen dancing were thought insane by those who could not hear the music. So I checked this up. I became a little bit suspicious. Is this really a Nietzsche quote? And it doesn't seem to be a real Nietzsche quote, actually. There's a long quote from The Birth of Tragedy that maybe could be something similar to it. But I can compare it a little bit to like Machiavelli's quote, or people attribute like the ends justify the means to Niccolo Machiavelli, but he never really said it. He said something more like the action is accused, but the outcome excuses it. So maybe it isn't a real Nietzsche quote, but he says something kind of similar in The Birth of Tragedy. So yeah, I just wanted to correct myself. Yeah.
Cool.
Have you found this hadith that Alasa posted?
No. What was that for?
It was this one about the intestines.
No, sorry, I didn't see that.
Okay, I can read it, but you can show it. It's in...
Okay, go ahead. I think let's do the final hadith if you want to do that.
Yeah, I can read it, but if I post it one more time in the link, and then you can show it for everybody. Ah, oh, it disappeared. There's the hadith. Okay, so Ibn Umar reported Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam as saying that a non-Muslim eats in 7 intestines, whereas a Muslim eats in 1 intestine. So there you have it.
Okay.
This is the truth. We have...
No doubt there'll be some explanation for that.
It's a bit weird because
I'm sure it's metaphorical.
Must be.
If you are a non-believer and then you convert to Islam, does that mean that the number of intestines are reduced to 1 from like -6? And if you become a murtad, does that mean that you gain 6 intestines?
I think it's usually explained with the idea of it's talking Muslims are more greedy than Muslims, and like it's as if they have 7 intestines where Muslims only have 1.
So you mean it's metaphorical?
It's usually explained that way. Whether or not it was originally intended to be metaphorical, who knows? Might have been, might not have been. Well, actually, considering that they probably had seen a lot of non-Muslims, it probably was metaphorical.
I don't know. These guys were...
I mean, these were people, they knew how to wield a sword and spear. The intestines
they could probably open a... Yeah.
Cool. Guys, thanks very much. I'll have a think about what we do for the next show. I did see another video with Ali Dawa doing his trying to do his teleological argument, which I think is deeply flawed, and Detective Inspector Monkfish pointed that out quite well. So perhaps that we can do that video next week. I'll post it as soon as I can find it. Where he goes into this whole thing of, is this iPad or is this piece of paper? Which one would you consider designed? If you think this is designed, well, why don't you think the whole universe is designed? That whole deeply flawed argument, and perhaps we can talk about that, because a lot of people bring that up. So I'm sure it's been covered before.
Is this a video?
Yes. Yeah, I'll just see quickly if I can find it here very quickly, because this is one that is I often hear people talking about this when I'm down there as well.
Allah doesn't exactly send his best and brightest to argue for him, does he?
I'm not sure if there is a best or brightest, to be honest. I wonder if this is one. Let me. I think I'll find it here quite quickly, actually, and then I'll post the link for people to look at. Here we go. I love the descriptions as well that some of the Muslim filming people put in as to what they think the result of the video is. So I'll pop it into that chat there, and then I'll also pop it into the main chat for people to go and look at. So for next week, why can't I? Oh, I know why. 1 second. Can't do it there for a second. I know why. Did you guys get did it come to you there on the chat?
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, you've got it there. So let me just make sure that I can.
Agnostic finds evidence for a creator. Speaker's Corner.
That's the one, yeah.
Our channel.
That's the one. I just want to see if I can put it in the chat. For some reason, I've lost the actual chat itself. Where are we? And, I'll pop it in here. So for next week, we can have a look at this. Here we go, guys. We'll go have a look at that video, and then we can chat about that next time, because I think that it's an interesting point. He's obviously got a very simplistic view on it. But he's learned that from some of his other sort of guys, and they bring this up a lot. So, the fine tuning as well as the design argument, and they try and lump these two together. And so that might be one that we can discuss next week.
Okay.
Brilliant, guys. Thanks so much. So we'll do it again next Friday, same time, 8 p.m. See how we get on.
Is it not? Are we not also having it on Sunday as well, or is it just going to be solely Fridays?
Only Friday.
Yeah, we'll just do Friday.
Is it also going to be at 2000 UCT?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We'll see how we get on.
So
we only had 11 or 12
Friday,
people on, but it's a difference in time. So hopefully we'll get more viewers. The thought is that more Muslims might come on. We'll have to just see if that's the case.
And if you know any Muslim, any Dawah person, anything, please just invite them to the show. All you
definitely.
smart Dawah guys out there, here you have the chance to totally destroy we kuffar that have 7 intestines. Yeah,
well, hopefully something a bit more meaningful.
Rob, one thing, like in the actual description, it says, join us, was it hangouts.com. You may actually want to change it, because that link is now no longer working, and not everyone thinks to scroll.
Yeah, we have to change all the.
I thought I had changed it, but I thought I had changed it, but it still seems to be coming up there. I'll have a look into that. Yeah,
we have to change
why it's still doing that. It shouldn't be. I thought I changed all of those and put it to Friday and done all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'll have a look at that. Cool, guys. Thank you so much.
Every time I actually put in the link I normally do, google.hangouts. Sorry, no, godless.ch. It kept on taking me to a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Something's happened there. I'm not sure what happened. I stopped using it, so I'm not sure. So I have to paste in this funny link each time. We need a link to share. Yeah, what will need to happen, so somebody in the comments is saying we need a link. What we need to do is just get people to subscribe to the Jinn&Tonic show. So go to the Jinn&Tonic channel, get people to subscribe. They will get a notification that we've set up for the next live broadcast, and they'll get a notification when it goes live. We don't yet have any other way to that I'm aware of where we can give a link ahead of time. I'm not sure how they did that. But at the moment we can't use that original link. So get them.
It isn't that hard. I mean, it's just you only click the link. It's not harder than that, and it's not hard to subscribe to the channel. And So
Yeah, subscribing is the easiest way because then you'll get notified about when
yeah,
the thing's going to come out. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a link at the moment. I have to paste a new link into the chat each time for people that want to join actually onto the Hangout itself.
yes.
Great stuff. Guys, thank you so much. Look forward to speaking to you next Friday, 8 p.m. And thanks to all the listeners and people in the chat as well. Look forward to speaking to everybody next week.
Thank you.
May Spider-Man be with you, inshallah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.